My name is Jerry Papazian. I'm the president of the U.S. Capitol Page Alumni Association. And it is a pleasure to welcome you all to the first ever all-class homecoming reunion of former U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, and U.S. Supreme Court pages. Welcome. Now, I'm going to ask you, the wait staff is asking that your dinner tickets. You must have your dinner tickets. You must put them in front of you. If you do not, you're not going to get a meal tonight. So please take those tickets out. There are 3 different colors. As they say, no ticket, no dinner tonight. Please help us. They are color-coded on a reason. So we have a very full program tonight, but we're going to let you enjoy dinner first. So please enjoy your meal, and we'll be back as soon as dessert's served. Thank you all. The pictures that you see on our slideshow here are courtesy of Jim Oliver, the official or unofficial historian of the Bridge program. Thank you. Many of those are the same images that you see on your tables there as centerpieces. Well, 4 years ago, at the 2008 reunion of the pages of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, when we were Ken Smith, who had organized the previous 2, was looking for someone to take on the reunion in 2012, 4 years away. And I thought to myself, who is going to do that? Because it wasn't going to be me. And this fellow, who I'd never met before, raised his hand, Chris Covey, and volunteered to do so. He managed to convince another page to co-chair with him. So I want to introduce now to you the co-chairs of this homecoming reunion weekend, Shelley Thomas and Chris Covey. Please.
We hope you're having a great time. I have for you a letter from Congressman Jonathan Turley, who is the Dean of the House and also an alum, who could not be here with us today but did want to send his regards. To the pages of the U.S. Capitol Page Association, I would personally like to take this opportunity to congratulate you and thank you all on the work of your current and former pages as you kick off your exciting homecoming weekend. As many of you already know, the role that the Page program has played in the House of Representatives has been critically important, beginning officially with the 20th Constitutional Congress in 1827. Yet 185 years of dedicated service is not all the Page program has delivered to our Congress. Pages were an integral part of the First Continental Congress in 1774, aiding in the very development of our nation from the beginning, although at that time they were not called pages. Pages have graced the halls of Congress since the very founding of our government, delivering important messages and making sure that the flow of information between congressmen made it safely through the labyrinth of tunnels. Since the birth of the technological age, pages have adapted to the challenge and provided other fundamental services as well, always serving the needs of the House impeccably. The value of the Page program cannot be overstated. It is for this reason that I acknowledge with great sorrow the closing of the Page program. As a former Page myself, I know, both through experience as a Page and experience as a congressman, the vital role you all play and have played in our nation's history. This dedication to country, precociousness of mind, and loyalty to the job at hand has served the program well throughout its illustrious history. I hope that you all accept my appreciation for the work that you have all done and the appreciation of all of those whom the program has touched. I look forward to working with all interested parties to ensure the Congress remains open and accepting to the contributions of young people who are so important to the continuation of our democracy. With every good wish, sincerely, John D. Dingle, Member of Congress.
Hear, hear.
We would like to take this opportunity to recognize a few people among us who were with us tonight, who have come from some very great distances. Some of our farthest attendees today are Joshua Wallenstein, who came from Dubai. Barbara Muir-Hines, who came from Australia. Naomi Wallace-Asher, who came from the United Kingdom. And Stephanie Ho, here from China.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Chris Noby of the great state of California. So it is a pleasure to be here. One of the things I noticed as I was seeing the younger alums is what I missed in the class of '67 is not seeing all the female pages. Congratulations to each and every one of you. We want to acknowledge three special guests here tonight. We have a former member of Congress who has assisted the association on many occasions, Jim Colby from Arizona. We are also blessed to have the continuing involvement of a person from California, Sacramento, the former Officer of the House, as the Clerk of the House, Donald K. Anderson. The association is graced on its board of directors to include the former Senate Secretary of the Senate, Joe Stewart. This association put together this homecoming with the help of a lot of people, and some of the most helpful people were those who could help sponsor the homecoming. And I'd like to recognize those individuals, some of whom are present. If you can hold your applause until the end of the list. Starting out with Edward J. Hillings, House 1955, Michael A. Revelle, Senate 1955, Sam Allison, House 1986, Lowell Bayer, who I understand is here, House 56, Edmund Glavis, House 1980, Sarah Mirza Hensley, Senate 02, Bill Hitchcock of Texas, House 62, Sidney Kaplan, who I understand is here, Senate 62, Donald M. Carp, House 53, Claudia A. Minish, House 85, James Nuzzo, House 71, and Walter Joe Stewart, Senate 53. There's one other person who also sponsored and did many other things. It's a person you've already heard from. It's a person who embodies the political acumen of Sam Rayburn and the social skills of Tip O'Neill, two Democrats at least. He gives new meaning to the word University of Southern California graduate. Even I take my hat off to him. Our final sponsor, Gary Papazian. The last thing I'd like to read you is a letter from a person who wanted very, very, very much to be here tonight, and ill health is keeping him from us. This is Ken Smith of the class of '58, of whom you have already heard and many of you know. He wrote, "My dear friends from Capitol Page School, tonight's homecoming celebration dinner marks an end and a beginning. It was my pleasure to have organized the 2004 and 2008 reunions, together with the help of those who came around me. Reunion 2004 began as an effort by the class of '54 to celebrate their 50th anniversary. And by the time we gathered, it included representatives from the classes of the 1940s and 1950s. Reunion 2008 picked up from that point and added the classes of the 1960s and the 1970s with one notable exception. There was a young whippersnapper from the class of 2002. His name is Bill Peard. Bill had a vision for forming the Capitol Page Alumni Association. What you see tonight is, pardon me, is the culmination of his tireless efforts, again with much credit due to those who came around him. This brief history would not be complete without mentioning the names of three others. George Trumpore was the original organizer of Reunion 2004, assisted by his wife Sharon. George's health failed him prior to our gathering that year, and I was asked to step into the breach. George's wife Sharon is with you tonight. Retired Navy Captain Vance Morrison, class of 56, assisted by his wife Libby, served as my executive officer in 2008, overseeing a myriad of details, including registration and hosting the hospitality suite. Vance has also been instrumental in this year's event. Finally, Jerry Papazian, class of 73, the second and current president of the association, caught Bill's vision and has run with it. Together, they have provided the leadership for this week's celebration, again, with much help from so many. The end I referred to in my opening paragraph alludes, sadly, to the end of the House Page program as we have known it. The beginning alludes happily to the formation of an active alumni association which will permit those of us who have shared the unique experience of serving as pages of the U.S. Capitol and Supreme Court to gather and share for the foreseeable future. I regret more than I can express in writing not being able to be with you this evening. I look forward to being with you at our next homecoming. Ken Smith, class of 1958.
I first want to thank you, Chris and Shelley, and I've asked them to stay up here for a reason, because I want to first introduce the members of our board of directors who are here tonight. And I'm just going to ask you, when I call your name, just please stand, hold your applause, and we'll get this all introduced. So this team has been fantastic, and we could not put on this program. You've been hearing more and more from us over the last couple of years, and you'll continue to do so. But it's this group of volunteers who have made this happen. So in addition to Chris and Shelley, behind me, Beth Ambrose. Beth, please stand. There, Beth? No, not yet, not yet. Bill Peard. Bill, no, keep standing. Beth, keep standing. Billy, they're back there. Vance Morrison. Joe Stewart. Joe. Miles Taylor. And Shelley and Chris, the members of our U.S. Capitol Page Alumni Association Board of Directors. Let's have a round of applause. Thank you all. Now, taking on the co-chairmanship of a homecoming, especially of an organization that's fledgling, is a tough job. And these two people standing behind me did an incredible job, and just looking at this audience here, you should be very proud of the turnout the whole weekend, especially this evening. So we have purchased a little thank you for both of you, and I want to do this now instead of after the evening's over with. So just have some gifts for you. For Shelley, her long-desired puzzle of the U.S. Capitol building and some other things. Shelley, thank you very much. And for Chris, he years ago, or a few years ago, mentioned to me that he had long, what he remembered most of his service in the House of Representatives was the car of history of Muse Cleo taking notes over the House of Representatives. That statue's in Statuary Hall now, and we have a replica of the car of history in this empty box. It actually was shipped to his home already. But Chris, thank you very much. Thank you both. And while we're doing this, please forgive the indulgence here. Chris mentioned in Ken Smith's letter about Bill Peard, and Bill, start walking up here, please. 4 years ago, he and a few of his friends started an alumni association, or talking about an association in Beth's apartment, and what you see tonight is the efforts 3 years later. He called me and said, would you be interested in serving on the board? If I were 30 years younger, I would have been the guy calling the guy 30 years older saying, would you be doing this? So he just got ahead of me here a little bit. So, but a year and a half ago, he called and said, I'm about to start law school. Would you mind picking up the chairmanship of the board of directors of the association for a year or two? What's going to happen? We have a homecoming that's under control. And I said, no problem. A couple years of law school, I've done that. You're not going to want to serve as president during that time. You have other things to do. What could possibly happen until on August 8th, I got a phone call. I was at Kinko's, and Beth Ambrose called and said, have you seen the paper yet? Or the news release. And well, our lives changed quite a bit. But I want to today publicly acknowledge your founding of this organization with a gift well, it's a legal gift. Purchase of the Supreme Court. You can open this later here. It's the Lady Justice with the scale. So please. He's going to say a few words later, but let's have it. Rod, I'm going to ask you all to please stand up in your seats right now. Let's stretch a little bit here. We're going to have a little fun. So, we have representatives here, pages, who served in this decade, in the last decade, in the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, 60s, 50s, and 40s here. And it's always interesting. When I've been involved in similar organizations that had a long range of membership, I've always liked to do this. And so I'm going to ask that, please all stand, and then as I call out the year of your page service, I'm going to ask you to sit down. So with that, I'm going to ask that all our guests here, our non-page guests, and teachers, and everyone will hear about them later, please have a seat. So in theory, all of you still standing served as a page in the House and the Senate or the Supreme Court, right? Yes? Good, okay. Now, so we're going to work backwards here a little bit. I'm going to start, I know our most recent page class alum was 2011, so I'm going to ask where he is, please sit down. Yeah, okay. And as I go through these years, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to go much quicker now. Those who were served in 2010, 2009, 2008, 2007, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2001, a very significant year. 2002, actually, before you sit down, celebrating their 10th anniversary. Thank you all for coming. You all back there. Congratulations to the class of 2002, 2001, and 2000, please. 2000s down. We're not going to go with the 90s. And I'm hoping, I sat here with a couple math teachers, and I remember I can go backwards counting again. So 1999, sit down please, 98, 97, 96, 95, 94, I know you're here, 93, you had the largest growth, the largest class in the 90s, 1993, 1992 celebrating their 20th, congratulations. 1991, 1990, the 90s you had the largest attendance here tonight, congratulations. So, 80s, 1989, 88, 87, 86, 85, 84, 83, 82, 1980, 1982 class celebrating 30th year. I'm not sure we have too many, but I think there are a few here. Class of 82, congratulations. Okay, we're in the 70s now. That was the 80s, but 80s just went like that. So. 1979, 78, 77, 76, 75, 74, 1973. I know you have a lot. 1972 celebrating. This is our 40th. I'm in class 72. 72, 1971, 1970. Checking, there are no women standing at this point, right? Okay. Where did I? Okay, the 60s. No, we're not going to remember this too much. So 1969, 1968, 67, 66, 65, 64, 63, 1962, celebrating 50 years. Class of 62. 1961, and the infamous class of 1960. Gentlemen, so please. So, well, those are the 60s. We did ask them to sit up front here. So, we're going to go a little slower now. Class of 1959, class of 1958, remember this is now over 50 years ago. 1957, 1956, got a big class in 56, 1955, 1954, got a lot of 1954s, 1953, 1952, 1950, 1950. Now let's have I rescued that. Charlie from the class of 1949. Now, I have two gentlemen standing here. And I'm not going to fight out who was the oldest here, who was there first. But obviously, I want to acknowledge. I read 1972 already. I just want to acknowledge two people in the room here that you're going to hear a little bit more about one of them in a moment. But we have here Joe Bartlett, class of 44. And Miles Garrigan, class of 42 or 43. 41. Actually, I will. Doing the math, that was 71 years ago, and he has shared with many. Miles has shared with you many of you the story of his being on the floor of the House during FDR's speech after Pearl Harbor, and he did relay. I know he relayed to a lot of us, and you had a chance to talk to him afterwards about the lone no vote from Jeanette Rankin against and his story with her. But with that, I hope you all see what an incredible legacy we have for PAGE program, and it's not. There is a reason why the House historians came and spoke Thursday at our panels. We are the eyes and ears. We are the people still around who were there in the 40s and heard those stories in the 50s, were there when the shooting in 54 occurred, and they have been thrilled. We collectively were young enough and still around to talk about firsthand what happened those days. So we have a significant role to play in the history of this country. But I would now like to introduce, to continue that, a short presentation, Vance Morrison. Vance?
I'm not going to give you a presentation, but I am going to do an introduction. It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Joe Bartlett. Joe attended many of our meetings that planned the initial reunion in 2004 and 2008. He's come to these reunions, he's been supportive of these reunions. It's just amazing. So Joe and I have known each other for about 8 years. However, he and my brother attended Page School together. My brother was a Page from 43 to 47, and I think a year the two of you overlapped. So I feel like I've known him for a long time. Joe was born in West Virginia. I'm going to give you a quick biography here. And awarded a 30-day appointment as a house page on the 1st of August, 1941, with the help of Representative Wright Patman of Texas. Having impressed doorkeeper Joe Sennett and House Clerk South Trimble, Joe received additional page appointments while serving as a page overseer and while attending the Capitol Page School. Upon graduating from Capitol Page School in 1944, Joe enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. He was honorably discharged as a private first class in 1945. Returning to the Capitol after his service, Joe was appointed as the Republican Chief of Pages by Speaker Joe Martin of Massachusetts. He oversaw the work of several dozen House pages, some as young as 11 years old. He was commissioned from the ranks into the Marine Corps Reserve. Joe was recalled to active duty in January 1951 during the Korean War and served until June of 1952. From 1953 to 1971, Joe was a House reading clerk, sharing duties on the rostrum and working with the speakers and the clerk's offices on numerous floor-related matters. He also served as chief reading clerk for 6 Republican National Conventions. And from May 1971 until he retired, he served as minority clerk. In January 1979, a year after retiring from the U.S. Marine Corps as a brigadier general, Joe retired from the House. During his career, he received honorary law degrees from the Atlanta Law School and Salem College, and was awarded the military's Legion of Merit. In 1982, he was a distinguished scholar in residence at the Federal Executive Institute. He and his wife, the former Virginia Bender, have 2 grown daughters, Linda and Laura. Joe, it gives me great pleasure, and please join me in honoring Joe Bartlett.
I don't know how I can speak anything after a nice tribute like that. I don't deserve it. Vance, you exaggerate. But I certainly do appreciate it. You know, some of you know that I've got mesothelioma. Some of you haven't any idea what that is. Most of you probably don't care. But I'll tell you, at this very hour, there are people scouring the effects of the United States Capitol to find out where a 14-year-old page boy could have been exposed to asbestos. The process takes 30 to 40, 50 years to find out that you've had that misfortune, and then you're left with the condition that for which there is no cure and there's very little treatment. But I say that just to let you know, hope that you stay well, and if you had the same exposure to the Joe Sinot hold or the tunnels of the Capitol that I had, where there probably was plenty of asbestos, I hope you never have that experience. You know, I got this, this is not something you can learn about very far in advance, and I did get the final verdict in January, and I called Ken Smith, and I said, Ken, I've been looking forward to the reunion next May, but it doesn't look like I'm gonna make it. Oh, Ken says, you will. He says, we'll pray you down. Well, bless his heart, I'm sorry he's not here to know, but at least his participation succeeded in doing that very thing. And I'm so grateful. Now, he also put a little word out that I'd had this problem, and I don't know how I could possibly tell you how much it meant to me to hear from so many of you here, and some of you who didn't quite make this reunion, but who are former pages, who took time to say something nice about our experience. It touched me deeply. I treasure the associations that I've had. I cherish each of you as individual friends. Beyond that, there's not much that I can say except that you have enriched my life, broadened my horizons, and given me so much for me to live with joyfully as we go down the path. Thank you. How can I say thank you enough? But I thank you so much. And I just wish we had more time together that I could learn a little bit more about you. Get you an introduction by Vance Morrison. But anyway, I do appreciate it, Vance. And Jerry, thank you for all that you've done to bring about this wonderful occasion.
Thank you, Joe. And we do have some gifts for you, a t-shirt, and a copy of Daryl Gonzalez. Daryl is here tonight, the Children Who Ran for Congress, the definitive study of the history of the PAGE program. So I know Daryl will sign this for you too.
Okay.
So thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it.
I'd like to call up Bill Peard and Beth Ambrose.
It's wonderful to be here tonight. As has already been mentioned earlier, this association rests on the shoulders of many people who've come before me and before Jerry and all of us. I want to give thanks again to Ken Smith, who could not be here, and I want to ask everyone to keep him in our thoughts, along with many others who couldn't be with us tonight. We set about to start this association about 4 years ago, a group of us, times were different then. The house program was seemingly strong, as we could tell, and the purpose was to bring former pages together who were classmates, who already knew each other, bring them in connection again, who may have lost touch, and to forge new friendships, which is what has happened to me. I've become friends with many of you in this room over the past days and over the past years who I never would have otherwise known. And I hope that many of you are meeting one another for the first time and reacquainting each other with your old classmates. So that was the primary goal, to bring former pages together in communion, to build a database, which we've been successful at. We have now 11,000 names in our database. We started with a couple hundred 4 years ago. But we overlooked something vitally important in the early years of our planning, while we had the goal of bringing together former pages, and we did so, I think, successfully, we overlooked until recent months the fact that what made the page experience important to all of us, I think we can all agree, was not only our friends, but also our mentors, the staff and the teachers at the Capitol Page School and the House Page School and the Senate Page School over the years. And so in the past few months, we began tracking down those former staff members and teachers, and we have many of them here tonight, and we want to introduce each of them to you.
It's my pleasure to go through the list. We'd ask if you'd please come forward and right up here and up right here and hold your applause to the end. Shirley Alexander, House Page School Administrative Assistant. Barbara Bowen, teacher, House Page School. Daryl Gonzalez, teacher, House Page School. Sebastian Hobson, teacher, House Page School. Lana Klein, teacher, House Page School. Robin Bridges, House Page School Registrar. Linda Miranda, House Page School Principal. The next is Mary Knotts, who is here as Dr. Knotts' widow. And we lost Dr. Knotts in the last few years. He was the principal of House Page School for many years, and also was the creator of the curriculum back in the 80s, is that correct? 83, when they did some reorganization of the House Page program. Next we have the bosses, who we all remember fondly. Lenore Donnelly, House Page School Supervisor, Democratic side. Donald K. Anderson, Clerk of the House of Representatives, also Page Supervisor at one point in time in his career. Jim Oliver, Page Supervisor, also manager in the House Republican Cloakroom. We'd also like to recognize Joe Bartlett, who just spoke, and Joe Stewart, who is on the board of this association as supervisors and mentors for Pages for many years. So, may I have a nice round of applause. We have a gift of a t-shirt and a ball cap for each one of our teachers and our Page supervisors.
Get everybody. There we go. Gotcha.
While they're passing out the hats, so to speak, I do want to, as I was thinking, pages are going to want to come back and see their fellow pages, page colleagues. And I thought, no, the person I kept in contact the most over the years was someone who's not here tonight, Ron Lash. And I thought, it was the teachers, it were the supervisors, it were who became mentors, and the principals, and these men and women. Though for some of you, some of you remember the likes of Naomi Ulmer and Florence Block and Lou Steele. I'll say these are our modern day, for those of us in the 60s and 70s who thank you all. Let's have a round of applause. These people have kept this program going for so many years. John Anderson, well, and as I alluded to, that horrible August day last year, we got inundated, obviously, with, we were the official Alumni Association page program, and phone call after interview. But I opened up the Los Angeles Times one day, soon thereafter, and read an editorial written by this law professor from the George Washington University. And I'm embarrassed to say I probably had heard of him, but I had not connected him with the page program. Though with a little bit of research, I realized that indeed he had served as a page in 1977 and 78. And following that, went on to get his bachelor's degree at the University of Chicago, his JD at Northwestern, and was serving as holding the Shapiro Chair for Public Interest Law at George Washington. But this article, it just hit home. I think I read the article, and I think I immediately found his email address and emailed him and said, "You don't know me, but," and he responded like that. Gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker for the evening, Professor Jonathan Turley, who has a few words of wisdom for us. Dr.
Thank you very, very much. I can't thank the association more enough for inviting me. This is a good example that if you wait long enough, they have to use you as a reunion speaker one of these days. And so that rule has been proven correct. I don't know how Jerry does everything he does. When I first heard from Jerry, after I ran that column, I was like, wow, this guy is just a whirling dervish. I remember when we interviewed for the film that Jerry's helping put together, I had I think like 103 temperature and was tripping out on enough pharmaceutical drugs to put me away for years in the federal penitentiary. And Jerry walked me through between coughs and everything else. He's an extraordinary man, and our debt to him is immense. You know, when I came into this room, besides the depressing aspect of having my class so close to the front, I was like, man, when is the 70s going to show up? Yeah, but I saw so many of my friends here, Maria and Jim and all the people who served with me. I talked with people that I served with who are not here, like Tom Daniels and others, Andrew Stunt and others. But also to see Anderson and Jim Oliver, who we were really their sons and daughters. They took care of us. And no harm came to us because of them. I remember coming in the first time and finding Don, who looked exactly like he looks now. And just being overwhelmed by this man of such incredible dignity. And it is a wonderful legacy that we all share. And when I came, Don and I were talking in the hall how all of us have the same story of showing up as pages in brand new wingtips and shoes that are a disaster in your first week as a runner page. And how all of us ended up soaking our feet for a couple of weeks as the shoes got broken in. I ended up at Mrs. Pickett's boarding house because boy pages just basically told to go find shelter. And my two sisters brought me and put me in Mrs. Pickett's boarding house, and she had only housed male pages and FBI agents. And she was really a piece of work. I have to say, we got out of there pretty fast, but as soon as our adult supervision left. But we had wonderful times. You know, I remember the names of all the pages I served with because I remember all the scenes. I remember all the things that we did, stupid things and magnificent things alike. I mean, we did all the things that teenagers do You know, I remember one time we gave away all the Republican pages, congressional records by pushing out their bin of congressional records, putting a sign on it saying, "Free from your government." And, it took about 30 seconds before every single congressional record was gone. And I was in the class. I was not involved in this. Where I forgot who did it, but I remember in the typing class, two of the pages. Maybe y'all remember it, but two of the pages. Our poor teacher, was just facing the horrific task of teaching typing to children at like 5 in the morning. And so when finally one page stood up and screamed, "I can't take it anymore," and went running out to that balcony. And then slipped out, and she went running out, went, "Oh my God!" And he went, "Oh!" And she went running out, and a page down below laid on me. That wasn't very nice, but it was very fun. But, we learned a lot. We learned a lot about the government, about ourselves. I still have the fake ID that shows me at age 21 with braces looking quite scared at age 15. I believe Andy Shaw got me that one. And one of the most important lessons I learned after I became a leadership page, when my first paycheck I lost playing poker with the doorman, who informed me when I first became a leadership page that this was a rite of passage, and that I really need now to join the floating poker game down in the basement. After I lost my paycheck, I remember calling my father and saying, "I'm a little short," and he says, "I thought you just got your paycheck." And I said, "Well, there's this tradition." Yeah. And my father said, "Well, it's worth the money. You learn something very important, to avoid traditions when you can." But we learned a lot about ourselves. The fact is, we represent something important in this government, in this society. And I'm not willing to put the page service in past tense. Like many people in this room, I continue to talk to members and anybody I can about the resumption of the House page system. It is far too precious for us to give up on it. Members of Congress come and go. Page system doesn't. We've been around since the founding of this republic. It'll take more than a few of these members to kill this service. And the people that killed the page service waited for a moment to do it. And they did it in a midnight meeting. They did it so that we didn't have a chance to speak. But we know something about history in the page service because we're part of it. And we know that things that have been done can be undone. I'm not being Pollyannish. I believe there will be an opportunity for us to resume the House page system. And looking at the people in this room, I feel confident that we're not going to simply go away. We're not just going to say, well, that's just the reality, that's the way it is. We were taught as youngsters in Congress that we're supposed to change the world. Well, sometimes you have to change it in a better image, certainly than the one we have today. Pages go back even beyond the founding of the Republican Continental Congress. Of course, the term page came from medieval time, when the page service was a required step to become a knight. And it was interesting when I look back over the years at the rules for pages, is that you had to become a page and then a squire, and then you became a knight. But what's fascinating about the page service back in those days is their curriculum included religion, manners, riding, hunting, hawking, and strategic games such as backgammon and chess. It wasn't until the end of their page service that they were trained on the lance and the sword. And when you read what references there are to pages back then. The emphasis was that pages were to watch the knights and learn from their example. Now recently, our knights have not been very inspiring, to say the least. And they certainly did not show this service the loyalty that it has shown to them. But I think it's a mistake for us to consider this Congress as the one that we served. We really served all the Congresses, and we served better people. You know, when I first showed up in 1977, like all of us, I was in my brand new suit and my wingtip shoes, and I walked onto the House of Representatives in the middle of a horrendous congressional debate. People were running by me, including pages, bumping into me, and I was just in awe, and I was pretty much terrified. In fact, the man that saved me was Henry Hyde. I was a Democratic page, but he saw me standing there, what was obviously with that doe in the headlights look, and he came over. Henry and I became great friends later. And I testified in front of him many times, and I always reminded him of the kindness he showed me. He didn't, I'm sure he didn't remember it because he showed kindness to a lot of people. But for me, service as a page really made me the person I am. And I think all of us feel that something formed in those years, those critical years when we were teenagers, we were uncertain who we were. We were trying to discover what type of men and women we would be. And during that moment, which is so critical for all teenagers around the country, it formed for us in the halls of Congress, around some of the greatest people in the country, debating the greatest issues of our generation. You know, for me, it hit me one day when I was the leadership page, I was cloakroom page, and our flag page was sick. And so, maybe it was when I was a floor page. I think it was when I was a floor page. And I think Jack Russ turned to me and said, floor page is sick, Turley, go and put up the flag. Well, I'd gone on this trip with the flag page a couple times. And it's the first time I'd done it alone. I went all the way up there. You go this rickety old ladder, and there's this wall. And on the wall is the names of pages going back generations that had written on the wall. I added my name to it, even though I probably shouldn't have, since I wasn't a flag page, but that's never stopped me from self-advancement in the past. And I went out on it. Now back then, I don't know what it's like now, but back then there was just a little wooden, like a plank that ran across the top. This thing looked like it must have been 200 years old. I mean, this is before OSHA really kicked in. And so, you know, and you took your life in your hands when you walked across that thing. It looked like it was going to, and it was a drop. Like people don't even realize what the top of the Capitol looks like. There's a drop right there by that flag. And so I went across this in the early morning because the Congress was coming in to debate the neutron bomb. And we were getting an early start, and I walked across that plank, and I put up the flag. And it didn't even occur to me that I was really doing anything. It was just another page. And then I looked up, and it was one of those radiant Washington mornings where everything was sort of beautiful red. And it was a clear day. And below me, the neutron bomb debate was just resuming. And all of a sudden, it hit me that this was a special time, a special place. I really didn't feel like a special person, but I could feel it. Something organic about Congress, something living, that I was part of it. I felt it. I felt, maybe because of that wall, that I was part of something going generations back. Pages that stood where I stood. I felt like there was a limitless potential, not just to my country, but to myself. Very few people have that opportunity. But I must tell you, I'm not willing to say that no other generation will have that opportunity. Because we all know that whether we go into politics or law or medicine, business, what is formed at those moments is character and a deep, deep love for this country. We have faced a lot of transitions. We have some of the physical representation of those transitions here. We have some of the first women sitting right over there that became girl pages, joined the boy pages. Not an easy task. 1965, we had our first African American page. 1925 was our page school being formed. And through the years, I've run across pages. I've been up against them. Tom Davis and I have been on the different sides of political debates. I don't know for how long. We've testified against on either side of each other. We were on opposite sides of the Elizabeth Morgan Act, which I struck down as unconstitutional. And we were on the opposite sides of DC vote. But when we were testifying on the DC vote, I had a lot of pride sitting there with Tom. There were 2 pages. They were debating whether the House of Representatives should be expanded to allow a voting member of the District of Columbia. And even though we disagreed wholeheartedly on the constitutional meaning of that, we both spoke, and no one could miss it, with a huge amount of love for the institution of the House of Representatives. One of my favorite recent memories was I had to argue the case of Judge Porteous, the impeachment trial in the U.S. Senate. And this is only the 14th trial of a judge in the history of the public, so everyone was trying to figure out how it was going to be done. And so your jury is the 100 senators, and you argue it on the Senate floor. And I mean, the 100 senators, most of whom you'd strike for cause in a real courtroom. But after I finished my Davis argument, I wanted to take a break. And I'd actually had this embarrassing moment because it wouldn't let me off the floor. And I'd already argued for like 5 hours and had enough coffee to drown the rhino. And so I decided I had to go find a place to go to the bathroom, and the Senate security, this just shows you how the Senate works. And the Senate police officer said, "You can't go, because the senators come right back. You can't leave them waiting. They'll be waiting to hear from you." And I said, "I do need to go." And I think it's for all of our advantage and benefit for me to go. And so the solution was this must have been because I was from the House as a page. The solution of the security guard was that he'd come with me and he picked up the thing and says, "Turley has to go to the bathroom. Turley has to go to the bathroom." And all across Capitol Hill, this rang out, and then we sort of, and then I go out and this phalanx of officers take me down the stairs. They don't have a bathroom on the floor. I don't know. I mean, at least in the house we have a bathroom right there, but you gotta go down these stairs. Well, the reporters see this, me being taken off by police, so like 300 reporters follow me. And we all stop in front of the bathroom. And I turn and say, this is a lot of pressure. It really is. So, and so when I came out, actually, the guard said, "Turley is going to the bathroom." I said, "Stop that! For God's sake!" So to say the least, I was a little bit embarrassed, and I did not want to go back onto the floor right away. And so I went to the area outside the floor, and I found myself a corner. So I just wanted to let the walkie-talkie thing pass. And some of the associates came out and said, "You come in," and I said, just give me a second. Okay, I'm just going to sit over here. So I sit down in the corner, and I'm looking through my remarks for the closing argument. And I look up, and there is 10 pages. Just looking like brand new dimes. And this one girl page said, "Mr. Turley, can we talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." And she says, we heard that someone said that you're a former page. And I said, I am a form page. I'm a house page. And they said, we just want to know what it's like. You know, we're rooting for you because we heard you're the former page. And I said, I am, but I'm not a former page, I'm a page. You ask anybody who's been in the service and they say, I'm a page. Because we identify it as something that continues. It's what helped make us, it's how we identify ourselves. And they asked me a whole bunch of questions. They thought being a page in the 1970s meant that we, you know, came here on horseback and, you know, they were very close to saying, was this entire building here? But I must tell you, when my wife asked me at the end of the trial, you know, what was it like? Because a lot of the senators were very nice and they came up and we talked about the trial. I said, you know, the best part was spending those 10 minutes with the Senate page, by far. And I gotta tell you, going back in there, and I gotta tell you, we're getting our butts kicked, you know, it's just a difficult case. But I felt totally rejuvenated. And to have those pages standing there watching me, I think from that point on, that whole trial, I was just basically arguing the case to them. You know, I've always been struck by something that Oliver Wendell Holmes said when he was asked to describe his time in the Civil War. Oliver Wendell Holmes is just a wonderful writer. And the thing that I remember most about a memorial speech that he gave once, it's about 50 years after the page system was created, and only about 20 years after the Civil War. He said, through our great good fortune in our youth, our hearts were touched with fire. It was given to us to learn at the outset that life is a profound and passionate thing. I've always thought that really sort of captured what many of us experienced as pages, that we found life was profound and passionate, and that our hearts were touched by fire. I think one of the things that is so difficult for us is that that flame that helped forge who we are was put out without giving us a chance to say how important it is. And so the question is, are we going to try to rekindle it? Or are we just going to leave the page service in the past tense? We need to remind people, and this is why they did it at a late night meeting and didn't tell people like John Dingell and other people who are advocates in Congress. We need to remind them that when this Constitution was written, there were pages there. When the Civil War occurred, there were pages there. When World War II was declared, there were pages there. They were witnesses to history. And they form a seamless web that goes back to the creation of this republic. In the end, as Clark once said, the difference between a politician and a statesman is that a politician thinks only of the next election, and a statesman thinks of the next generation. We have to think of the next generation because we owe it to them. We inherited so much from them that came before us. And for those people that really do believe that the page service is dead, all I can remember is, I remember when I was a page in the House, there was the scandal involving one of the first gay members in Congress, and it was Studd. And he was being attacked after the scandal occurred. He had, on Friday, been a very powerful member, and then on Monday, he was suddenly being attacked. And the man who was attacking him was Congressman Bowman, who later had to leave in a scandal involving homosexuality. But Bowman really sort of just bored into him. It was pretty rough. Even for that time, it was pretty rough. And I was standing there, and we had an old member of Congress, Mitchell, who used to be a Shakespearean actor. And he came up and he said, "Jonathan, what's going on?" I said, "Well, Congressman Bowman, he's really tearing up Congressman Studs, something horrible." And he listened, and he turned around and walked out the door. Then all of a sudden, I see him come in the middle door. And with his great Shakespearean voice, he bellows out, "Mr. Speaker, a point of personal privilege!" Like he was walking onto a set of King Lear or something. Well, of course, they had to yield, and he went striding in front. Didn't go to one of the side things. Went striding up to the front. And he turned to Bowman, and he said, "I've listened to this debate, and I remember that scene from King Lear when a bowman comes to the king and says that all has been won and victory is theirs. And as the bowman leaves, the king, he knows the bowman is deluded. And he says in his wake, 'Poor pitiful bowman, dreaming dreams of success which will never be achieved. Poor, poor, pitiful bowman, the last of a dying breed.'" And with that, he walked off the floor, and Bowman screamed, "I want the spelling of Bowman!" Because you could not use a personal name. And just as he reached the door, he spun around and said, "I speak of he who uses arrow and bow," and walked out. So to those who are saying that the page service is over and is merely a historical footnote, I say you're dreaming dreams of success which will never be achieved, because the living proof of the service is in this room. And I don't think we're going to make this a historical artifact. And so I look forward to working with many people in this room. These people are transients. They too shall pass. And the page service, I believe, in the House of Representatives will rise again. And I hope someday we will meet in a room like this to celebrate that very occasion. Thank you very much.
I'm about to introduce Miles Taylor, one of our board members. But as I do that, to come up here to say a few words, we are going to show a little film. He's going to tell you about it. If you can't see the screen, I encourage you to get a little closer. So if you don't want, I don't know how that's going to show in the back rows there. You want to see this, I think. So with that, Miles Taylor. Miles?
So I'm just going to give a quick introduction to this. As a lot of you know, we formed something in the wake of the cancellation program called the Save the Page Program Movement, STPP is what we were calling it. With a lot of help from the Alumni Association, we got in touch with a lot of the folks we needed to in the Alumni Network to really drive forward on this issue. But after we sort of shifted out of the write petitions, call your member of Congress, those sorts of activities, we started thinking about a phase 2 type of activity that we could do to keep the PAGE program not just in the minds of members of Congress, but in the minds of people in the public writ large. One of the ideas that we came up with after Jerry shot down my idea of burning our page ties and taking pitchforks to the Capitol was that we would look at doing the first comprehensive documentary of the Capitol Page program, Senate, House, and Supreme Court. And this is an idea that we kicked around for a while, and then Jerry found just the right person for it, a guy who couldn't be here tonight, Eric Young. He directed, what you'll see in a couple of months, but he also put together the teaser you're about to see for an in-progress and as yet untitled documentary on the history of the Capital Page programs. Eric is a filmmaker out in Los Angeles. He's been very generous with his time, assisting us in doing this, but really before we screen this, I want to give a round of applause to Jerry. He's been absolutely instrumental in putting together the teaser for what you're about to see, which is going to be an important development in us keeping awareness alive for the Page program. Jerry. So a quick teaser for the teaser. We sat down with a lot of folks, and we still have more to sit down with. Some of them in this room to interview and talk about their experiences, talk about how the program changed them so that we can convey that message to people. We really want to give a comprehensive look at the Page programs, but we sat down with members of Congress, business leaders, former White House officials, people who told an interesting story. As Jerry mentioned, as Chris mentioned, as Jonathan mentioned, also we sat down with the first female page. Female pages which we didn't have until the 70s. I'd also like to add my shout out to the female pages out there tonight. But we all have to do it. That said though, all joking aside, this is very much a labor of love so far. People have put a lot of time and effort into it, particularly Jerry and Eric. And we hope to show you around the 1-year anniversary of the cancellation of the program, much more comprehensive documentary, which I'm happy to announce to you tonight. Some people, we talked about this earlier today. We do intend to promote this widely, see if the networks are interested in picking this up. We're producing this as very much a market quality picture. And with that, the documentary.
That was just the teaser. And Miles said we came out one weekend, and I came out one weekend, and we interviewed 20 people in a hotel room with a Javon Circle, and 2 days, 20 people. That was just one weekend's work. And there are a lot of you in this room that I want to interview to finish this project. So please, when we come calling, please help us finish this. I think you'll. I still get chills. I still get chills watching this, and I think it kind of says why we're all here tonight and where we all in the future. We've heard from some very wonderful speakers. Professor Turley, thank you for very inspiring words here tonight. This is the end of our program, but our dinner tonight, not our program. I do want to just thank a few people that listened to your program here. That really helped make this, the full list is on the backside of your program, but I do want to thank Donald Anderson, Robin Bridges, Ron Lash, though he's not here tonight, Jim Oliver, and my sister Jeannie Papazi, way in the back, who helped through this idea. We will be in touch. We'll send out links and copies of DVDs and links to the photographs and everything from this weekend, and also from the Alumni Association. The centerpieces at your tables, please feel free to take those home. The flags, the pictures, those are pictures from Jim's collection. Please take them home, otherwise we're shipping them back to LA and we're not going to do that. So with that, I thank you all for coming. No need to leave, but that is the official end of our dinner program this evening, and I want to thank you all for coming.